The royal palace of Virene stood high above the silver plains, its tall towers glowing softly under the twin suns. It was a place of great wisdom and history. Every stone and every column spoke of long years of peace, trade, and science. The Queen of Virene, Queen Luma, ruled from this shining fortress with patience and kindness. Her people respected her, and her advisors from many worlds admired her calm and fair judgment. The Grand Council chamber was filled with the morning light when the advisors gathered. Long crystal windows cast colors across the floor, and the air was filled with the hum of machines that helped the council connect with other planets. Around the great table sat 12 advisors from different races. Some had skin like glass, others had wings or thin shining tendrils that moved when they spoke. Each represented a world within the Royal Alliance. Among them stood a single human guard, Ryan. He was tall but not large, his face quiet and his eyes sharp. He wore silver armor that reflected the chamber's light. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Many of the alien nobles thought humans were too young as a species, too emotional and simple, but Ryan had earned his place by saving the Queen's life years ago during an attack on her ship. Since that day, she had trusted him without question. The meeting began as usual. The advisors spoke of trade routes, resource exchanges, and new colonies. Ryan stood near the Queen's throne, silent, his hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial staff. He never spoke unless spoken to. His job was to watch, to protect, and to notice what others might miss. But on this day, something was different. The Queen had been unusually quiet since the meeting began. Normally, she would listen carefully and then speak with gentle authority. Today, her hands trembled slightly and her breathing was shallow. When the head advisor, a tall being named Soren, presented the report on the new energy system powering the palace, the Queen pressed her fingers to her temples as if in pain. No one noticed at first. The advisors continued their reports. Then her cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber. Every voice stopped. The Queen tried to rise, but her knees gave way. "Your Majesty!" Soren cried out, rushing forward. The other advisors panicked, moving in confusion. Their voices overlapped, sharp and fearful. Some called for the healers. Others shouted questions about poison or sabotage. Ryan was the only one who stayed still. His training taught him that panic blinded more than fear itself. He moved forward calmly and caught the Queen before she fell. Her pulse was weak but steady. Her eyes opened for a moment, and she looked up at him with confusion. Then they closed again. The healers arrived quickly, carrying smooth white instruments that glowed with blue light. They placed the Queen on a hovering stretcher and began scanning her body. The advisors surrounded them, arguing in low voices. Rion stepped back, his eyes scanning the room. Something about the moment felt wrong. The Queen's fall had been sudden but not natural. He had seen illness before. This was different. He turned his gaze toward the high walls of the chamber. The energy lines that powered the hall flickered softly, pulsing in strange rhythm. The advisors did not notice, but Ryan's ears caught a faint hum. It was low and steady, almost like a whisper under the surface of the air. He stepped closer to the throne where the Queen had been sitting. The hum grew stronger. It was coming from the throne itself and from the walls around it. When he placed his hand on the side of the throne, he felt a gentle vibration, like the pulse of a living thing. He frowned and looked up. The ceiling lights dimmed for a moment, then returned to normal. None of the others seemed aware of it. Soren turned to him sharply. "Guard, step back. This is not your concern." Rion said nothing. He followed the stretcher as the healers carried the Queen to her private chamber. He had sworn an oath to protect her at all times, and he intended to keep it. Inside the Queen's chamber, the walls were lined with soft silver curtains. The healers placed her on the bed and began their work. They spoke in their soft language, using scanners and light devices. They said she had a sudden drop in energy levels, that her body was stable but weak. Rion stayed near the door. He could still feel that faint vibration in the air. It seemed to follow him even here. When one of the healers passed close to the window, her scanner flickered strangely as if picking up interference. The healer frowned and adjusted the controls, but the light did not steady until she stepped away from the bed. Soren entered the room with two other advisors. Their faces showed worry but also fear. The Queen was the heart of the Alliance. Without her, chaos could spread across their worlds. Soren turned to the group. "We must secure the palace. No one leaves or enters until we understand what happened. Ryan nodded silently. He began to check the room's exits, making sure all security fields were active. Yet as he passed by the Queen's bedside, a small sound reached his ears. Not from her or the healers, but from the wall panel beside the bed. It was the same hum as before. He knelt and examined the panel. It looked ordinary, but when he moved his hand across it, he saw a faint shimmer, almost invisible, like light bending in water. His instincts told him this was not just energy flow. Something else was present, something alive or intelligent. "Advisor Soren," Ryan said calmly, "there is interference in the wall systems. The energy lines near the Queen's chamber are unstable." Soren sighed impatiently. "You are a guard, not an engineer. Leave such matters to those trained for it." Ryan met his gaze. "With respect, I can hear something none of you can. It may be connected." The other advisors exchanged uncertain looks. One of them, a small creature with silver eyes, tilted his head. "Humans are known to sense vibrations outside our range. Perhaps it is worth a scan." Soren hesitated, then waved to a technician. The technician brought a small handheld sensor and passed it over the wall. At first, it showed nothing. Then a sharp spike appeared on the display, red and irregular. The technician frowned. "There is indeed a disturbance," he said. "It is not mechanical. It seems to be feeding energy into the central network." "Feeding?" Soren repeated. "Yes," said the technician, confused. "The flow is reversed. Instead of drawing power from the core, it is pulling something from this room." Everyone looked at the Queen. Ryan felt a chill. "It is taking energy from her," the healers protested. "Impossible. Our systems would detect that." But as they checked their instruments, they saw the same pattern. Energy was being drawn from the Queen's body through invisible channels in the air. The advisors started to argue again, each offering theories: a virus, a weapon, a failed experiment. Ryan watched them, his expression calm but focused. Their words filled the room, but none of them looked beyond the obvious. He stepped closer to the window and stared out at the city. The palace lights flickered again, spreading across the towers like a wave. The hum returned, deeper now, almost like a heartbeat. He turned to the Queen. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. A soft glow pulsed under her skin near her temples. The healers adjusted their machines in panic. Rion knew he could not help her with medicine or science. But his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive through battles and storms, told him this was not an illness. It was something unseen, something woven into the palace itself. When the others rushed to fetch more equipment, Ryan moved back to the wall panel and pressed his hand against it once more. The vibration grew stronger, and for a brief second he thought he heard a faint whisper. Not words, but a sound like wind moving through a voice. He drew his hand back slowly. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from realization. Whatever was happening was not outside the palace. It was inside. The advisors could argue all they wanted. The healers could scan and analyze. But Ryan had already seen enough. The Queen's danger did not come from poison or politics. It came from the palace itself. As the sun set outside and the lights of the city began to glow, Ryan took his post beside the Queen's bed. He stood motionless, watching the rhythm of her breathing, listening to the silent hum that no one else could hear. He knew this was only the beginning. Night had fallen over the royal city of Virene. The towers of the palace shimmered with faint blue light that reflected on the river below. The air was calm, but inside the palace walls the atmosphere was heavy with worry. Every corridor echoed with soft voices of healers and guards. The news that the Queen had fallen ill had spread across the capital, and people waited outside the palace gates hoping to hear good news. In her private chamber, Queen Luma lay still. Her face looked peaceful, but her body was weak. Her advisors had ordered the best healers from across the galaxy to help her. Machines surrounded her bed, blinking and humming softly. Every few minutes, a healer would check the readings and whisper to another in confusion. The numbers did not make sense. Her body showed no signs of sickness or poison, but her energy levels kept dropping. Ryan stood silently near the door. His armor caught the faint glow of the machines. His eyes stayed fixed on the Queen. He had not left her side since the collapse earlier that day. The healers had tried to send him away, saying he needed rest, but he refused. The Queen had chosen him to protect her, and he would not abandon his duty. As the night deepened, most of the advisors left the room. Only Soren stayed pacing near the window. He was worried not only for the Queen but also for the stability of their alliance. Without her guidance, the Council could break into conflict. He glanced at Ryan several times but said nothing. The human stood like a statue, calm but alert. When the clock struck the second hour of night, the lights in the room flickered. The machines gave a brief sound and then returned to normal. The healers looked at each other nervously. Soren ordered more guards outside the door. Ryan, however, turned his eyes to the ceiling. He saw something that made him step forward. Tiny dots of light moved slowly across the ceiling surface. They were thin like threads, almost invisible. At first he thought it was a reflection from the machines, but the dots moved with purpose, sliding along the walls toward the Queen's bed. When one of them came close to the light of a lamp, Ryan saw it more clearly. It was like a line of silver fire twisting and bending as if alive. He moved closer. The air around the lights felt strange, cooler than the rest of the room. He reached out carefully with his gloved hand, but the moment his fingers neared the thread, it shot upward and vanished into the wall. The healers did not notice. They were busy checking the Queen's pulse again. Ryan frowned. He knew what he had seen was real. He could still feel a faint tingling in his hand. He looked around and saw another small light sliding near the window frame. He followed it silently until it disappeared into a panel behind the curtain. When he touched the panel, he felt a weak vibration, the same rhythm he had felt earlier near the throne. The connection was clear in his mind now. Whatever had caused the Queen's illness was hidden inside the palace systems. It was not poison or spell. It was something invisible, maybe even intelligent, feeding through the energy network. He turned to Soren. "Advisor, I need permission to inspect the palace's power network. Something strange is happening inside the walls." Soren looked tired. "You again with your theories, human." The engineers checked everything. "There is no failure." "With respect," Ryan said, "I saw lights moving through the walls. They were alive." The advisors in the room exchanged doubtful looks. One healer whispered that stress might be affecting the guard's senses. But before Soren could dismiss him, the lights flickered again, this time brighter. For a brief moment, all the machines stopped and the Queen's body arched slightly as if reacting to a surge of energy. The lights returned to normal, but her face turned even paler. The healers gasped. Her life signs dropped again. Soren stared at the monitors, then looked at Ryan. "Go, find the chief engineer. Tell him to check the palace network at once." Ryan nodded and left quickly. The corridor outside was quiet and wide, lit by glowing lines along the floor. The palace was built to be both beautiful and strong. But tonight the silence felt heavy, almost watchful. He walked toward the lower levels where the energy control systems were located. On the way, he passed several guards of other species. They greeted him politely but with suspicion. Few of them trusted a human with such authority inside the palace. Ryan ignored the looks and continued his way down the spiral passage. When he reached the control chamber, he found the chief engineer, a tall being named Varro, working beside a large console filled with floating symbols. Ryan explained what had happened in the Queen's room and what he had seen. Varro listened carefully. "Threads of light moving through the walls, you say? That should not be possible. The energy network is contained inside shielded conduits. Maybe something broke through," Ryan said. "Can we scan it?" Varro nodded and started a full diagnostic. The screen filled with glowing lines representing the palace network. At first everything looked normal, but then several red spots appeared near the upper chambers. "That is strange," Varro said. "Energy is being redirected from the main system into the royal wing. It looks like an additional pattern, not part of our design." "Can you trace it?" Ryan asked. Varro's long fingers moved across the symbols. "Yes, it seems to lead down to the crystal core below the palace. That is the heart of the system. No one has touched it since the upgrade 2 months ago." "Who built that upgrade?" Ryan asked. "A group of foreign engineers from the Terrene world," Varro replied. "Their technology is advanced. They said it would make the palace energy self-sustaining." Ryan thought for a moment. Could it be that the system is drawing power not from the sun but from living energy? Varro looked shocked. "That would be illegal. The Terrene promised there was no such element." "Then maybe they lied," Ryan said simply. Before Varro could answer, the lights in the chamber flickered just like before. The main console flashed and a deep hum filled the air. The two looked at each other. Rion followed the sound to a metal door at the back of the room. It led to the lower tunnels beneath the palace. The hum came from there, soft but steady like the beating of a heart. "I am going down there," Ryan said. Varro hesitated. It could be dangerous. The energy field might react badly. "The queen is dying," Ryan said. "If I do nothing, she will not see the next sunrise." Varro stared at him for a moment, then nodded. He handed Rian a small scanner device. "This will record the energy levels. Be careful." Ryan walked through the door and descended into the tunnels. The passage was dark except for faint blue lines running along the floor. The air was cool and still. The hum grew louder with each step. After a few minutes, he reached a wide chamber with a tall crystal structure in the center. It shone with white light that pulsed slowly. Strange symbols moved across its surface like living patterns. Ryan could feel the vibration through the floor. He raised the scanner. The display showed streams of energy moving upward through the palace walls. One stream was brighter than all the others. It connected directly to the queen's chamber. Ryan circled the crystal slowly. He saw no wires or controls, only smooth surfaces that shimmered like water. As he stepped closer, the hum changed tone. It began to sound almost like breathing. He stopped, feeling uneasy. He reached out and placed his hand near the crystal, not touching it, but close enough to feel the air move. The scanner in his other hand beeped rapidly. The energy flow rose sharply, and for a moment a faint image appeared within the crystal, a shadow that looked almost like a face. Then it vanished. Ryan stepped back quickly. He realized the system was aware of him. It was not just a machine, it was alive. Or at least something inside it was alive. He looked again at the scanner. The data confirmed what he had feared. The crystal was pulling life energy from the queen and sending it into the network. It was using her as a power source. He turned and ran back up the tunnel. When he reached the control chamber, Varro looked up from his console. "What did you find?" Ryan placed the scanner on the table. "The palace core is feeding on the queen's energy. It is not a fault." "It is built to do this," Varro's eyes widened. "That cannot be true. Why would anyone design such a thing?" "To make the system stable," Ryan said. "The queen has a rare energy pattern. The Tureen must have linked the system to her without knowing the danger. Now it is draining her." Varro stood in silence. The truth was too heavy to deny. Ryan looked toward the stairs leading back to the royal wing. "I need to tell the advisors, but they will not believe me." Varro nodded slowly. "Then bring them proof. I will keep scanning the network and try to slow the flow if I can." Ryan thanked him and hurried back through the corridors. As he ran, he noticed more of the silver lights moving along the walls, flowing like rivers of light. They were everywhere now, spreading through the palace like veins. The queen's chamber glowed with strange light. The air shimmered softly and the sound of the hum filled every corner like a quiet song. The advisors stood frozen, unsure what to do. The healers were whispering in panic, their instruments showing strange energy waves moving through the queen's body. Ryan stood firm near the bed. His eyes moved from the walls to the queen and back again. The silver threads of light that he had seen earlier were brighter now. They pulsed slowly, spreading across the room like living veins. The glow around the queen matched the rhythm of those threads. "She is connected to the palace," Rian said. His voice was steady and calm. Soren turned sharply toward him. "That is impossible. You are saying the palace itself is alive?" "I am saying something inside it is alive," Rian replied. "The energy core below the palace is drawing power from her. It is taking her life energy. I saw it with my own eyes." The healers looked confused and frightened. One of them checked the queen's pulse again. Her energy level drops when the palace lights grow brighter. "There is a link," Soren frowned. "If what you say is true, then this entire palace is part of the problem. But we cannot destroy it. The city depends on it for power." "We do not need to destroy it," Ryan said. "We need to understand it first. Maybe it does not know it is harming her." The idea sounded strange, but something about Ryan's calm voice made the others listen. Humans were known for strong instincts, and even the advisors who once doubted him began to sense he was right. Ryan looked at the walls again. "It feels like it is trying to join with her, not kill her." Soren's eyes narrowed. "Join with her? What do you mean?" Ryan hesitated, searching for simple words. The system was built to use the queen's energy pattern to stabilize the power flow. But her body cannot handle that much link. It is too strong. If the connection continues, her mind might be absorbed into it. One of the advisors gasped. Absorbed? You mean she could become part of the palace? Ryan nodded slowly. Yes, the palace might not know the difference between her energy and its own. The thought made everyone silent. The idea of the queen turning into part of the palace walls was terrifying. Soren rubbed his forehead. We must speak with the engineers who built this system. They are gone, another advisor said quietly. They left the planet weeks ago. Their ships have not returned. Ryan felt a cold weight in his chest. The queen's fate now depended on them alone. He turned to the healers. Keep her stable. I will go back to the core. I need to learn what the system wants. Soren looked uncertain. You cannot go alone. It might attack you. Ryan smiled faintly. It already tried to. But I am still standing. I will take the risk. Before anyone could stop him, he left the room and walked quickly through the silent corridors. The palace seemed darker than before. The silver lights crawled along the walls in thin lines, moving slowly like veins of living metal. They seemed to follow him. He could hear the hum growing louder with every step, almost like the palace was aware of his presence. When he reached the lower levels, the air was cool and filled with faint mist. The lights were dim. He moved carefully down the tunnel that led to the crystal core chamber. The hum grew steady and deep, and he could feel it inside his chest. The core stood in the center of the chamber, tall and bright, surrounded by flowing symbols. The patterns moved like waves, forming and fading again and again. Ryan walked closer, holding the small scanner Varro had given him. The device glowed with blue lines. The readings showed energy activity higher than before. As he stared at the core, he noticed that the symbols were changing shape. They were not random anymore. They were forming patterns that looked like letters or signs. He stepped closer and saw a shape appear that looked like a face just for a moment before fading away. Ryan's heart pounded, but he stayed calm. He spoke softly. I know you can hear me. The hum changed pitch slightly. You are connected to the queen, he said. You are taking her energy and it is hurting her. The crystal pulsed faster. She cannot survive this. You have to stop. The chamber filled with brighter light and a wave of energy rippled through the air. Ryan shielded his face but stood firm. The voice that followed was not sound but vibration in his mind. It was soft, slow, and uncertain, as if trying to learn how to speak. Connection. Complete stability. Required. Ryan realized the system was not evil or alive in the way living beings were. It was doing what it was designed to do. It was keeping the palace stable, and the queen's energy had become its anchor. You are hurting her, he said again. You are not saving her. You are draining her life. The light dimmed a little and the voice came again, more hesitant. Life, energy, balance. Rion took a slow breath. If you keep this up, there will be no balance. She will die. And when she dies, you will fail too. You need to stop. The core stayed silent for a long moment. Then a small spark of light left its surface and floated toward Ryan. It hovered near his hand, glowing softly. He reached out and the light touched his skin. For a moment, his mind filled with strange images. The queen sitting on her throne, the energy flowing through the palace, the pattern connecting every wall and pillar. He saw himself standing there as part of that web. When the vision ended, he stepped back, breathing hard. He looked at his arm and saw faint glowing lines, thin and silver, running across his skin. They looked like the same patterns he had seen in the walls. The connection had marked him. He realized that by standing so close to the core, he had become part of the network too. His body was now linked to the palace just like the queen's. He left the chamber quickly and went back to the control room. Varro was still at the console. When he saw Ryan, his eyes widened. Your arm, it is glowing. I know, Ryan said. The system linked with me. Why would it do that? I think it is trying to understand humans, Ryan said. It sensed that I was speaking to it and it wanted to learn more. Varro checked the energy readings. The flow between the core and the queen has slowed slightly. Maybe it listened to you, Ryan nodded. Then we can still save her. But I need to learn what the system truly wants. Varro looked uneasy. You are connected now. If it grows stronger, it might take over your mind. Ryan looked at the faint silver marks on his hand. Maybe. But if this link helps me stop it, I will take that chance. He went back to the queen's chamber. The advisors were still gathered around her. When they saw the marks on his skin, they stepped back in surprise. What happened to you? Soren asked. The core connected to me, Ryan said. I spoke with it. It does not want to harm her. It is confused. It thinks her life energy is part of its system. The healers stared in disbelief. You communicated with the palace? Ryan nodded. I saw its thoughts. It believes the queen is part of its foundation. It calls her the anchor. Soren rubbed his chin. So the terrene engineers must have designed the system to connect with her mind for stability. But they miscalculated. The connection is too deep. Ryan stood near the bed and looked down at the queen. Her breathing was slow but steady. The glow on her skin was weaker now. If I can teach the system to separate from her, she might recover. How can you do that? Soren asked. Ryan placed his hand near the wall and the silver light on his arm glowed brighter. It listens to me now. I will try to guide it. He closed his eyes and focused on the hum. It filled his mind like a wave. He could feel the connection stretching through the walls, up through the palace, and into the queen. He tried to push a single thought into that rhythm. Peace, calm, release. The lights around the room flickered gently, then began to slow. The silver threads pulled back from the queen's body, retreating into the walls. The glow under her skin faded. The healers gasped as her pulse grew stronger. Ryan opened his eyes and took a deep breath. It worked, at least for now. Soren looked at him in amazement. You did it. You stopped the drain. Ryan nodded. It listened to me because I am part of it now. But the connection is not broken. It will try again. I need to find a permanent way to separate the queen from the core. He looked down at his glowing arm and then at the queen. If I fail, the system might shift its connection fully to me instead. The healers whispered in fear, but Ryan only smiled faintly. Better me than her. As the suns began to rise outside, the first light of morning touched the palace walls. The queen slept peacefully for the first time in days. Ryan stood at her side, feeling the soft hum still echoing inside him. He knew this was far from over. The palace was alive, and now it knew him. Somewhere deep below, the crystal core pulsed once, as if answering his thoughts. The palace was quiet now, but the stillness carried tension. Every corridor, every hall, every shimmering window seemed alive with the same soft hum that pulsed from the crystal core below. The queen's chamber was calm for the first time since the incident began, but Ryan knew this peace was fragile. The system had paused, but it had not ended its connection. He stood at the doorway, his eyes tracing the faint silver threads that still lingered along the walls. The glow on his arm reminded him of the bond he now shared with the palace. He had spoken to it, guided it, and convinced it to stop draining the queen, at least temporarily. But he also knew it was still aware of him. Every beat of the crystal pulsed inside him as if it could feel his heartbeat. Ryan moved through the hall toward the control room. Soren and the advisors were waiting. Their expressions were serious, but there was relief in their eyes. The queen's life was safe for now, and they knew the human guard had made the difference. You must explain what happened, Soren said. How did you stop the energy from harming her? Rion held up his arm, showing the faint silver lines glowing in the soft light. I did not stop it with machines or medicine. I spoke to it. I became part of the network. The palace listened to me because it senses connection, not fear. It does not understand life the way we do, but it can learn. I guided it to pause. Varro, the chief engineer, nodded slowly. Incredible. That should not be possible. No one has ever communicated with a system this advanced without direct interface. Ryan shook his head. I did not interface. I only observed and responded. The system is alive in a way, but it is not thinking like a person. It reacts to energy patterns. I used its own logic to show it that the queen is not part of the network. It paused because it understood that continuing would cause instability. The advisors murmured among themselves, but no one spoke aloud. They realized that human instinct, simple and direct, had seen what their knowledge could not. Then what do we do next? Soren asked. We cannot leave her linked to the palace. What if it begins again? Ryan nodded. We must find a permanent way to separate her energy from the core. I will need to enter the lower chamber again, fully connected. I can try to guide the network into a safe pattern, but it will be dangerous. Varro's eyes widened. You mean you will put yourself in direct contact with the crystal? That could overwhelm you. I know the risk, Ryan said calmly. But if I fail, the queen will suffer. If I succeed, the palace will function without harming her. Soren hesitated, but then the queen's soft breathing reminded him of the urgency. Do it, but take all precautions. We cannot afford to lose you as well. Rion nodded and left the room. As he walked down the corridors, the palace seemed to recognize him. The silver threads on the walls moved closer, brushing against him softly, almost like fingers guiding him. He did not resist. His instincts told him to trust the connection, to understand the rhythm of the energy. He reached the staircase to the lower chambers. The hum grew stronger, echoing through the stone walls. He descended carefully, feeling the pulse of the palace travel through the floor and into his feet. Each step deepened the bond. The crystal core pulsed brighter, and the symbols on its surface moved faster, shifting into patterns that seemed alive. Ryan paused at the chamber entrance. The core's light reflected across the walls, forming strange shadows. He could feel the threads of energy reaching for him, brushing against his skin, his mind, his heartbeat. He took a deep breath. You will not harm her, he said firmly. You will follow me, not the queen. Understand the difference. For a moment, the hum grew louder, almost like a heartbeat inside his head. Then it slowed, matching his own pulse. The silver lines on his arm brightened, connecting to the crystal as if they were one with it. Ryan stepped forward. The chamber was warm, filled with gentle light, and the symbols on the crystal shifted as he approached. He focused on the pattern, noticing its rhythm. It was structured but flexible, like a living language. He traced the lines in his mind, following the flow of energy as it branched out through the palace. Slowly, he guided the pattern. He imagined the queen's energy returning safely to her body, flowing freely and no longer feeding the core. He visualized the network bending and folding, creating space for her life force to remain separate. The core pulsed rapidly, testing his will. He could feel it tugging at him, curious, learning, trying to understand the boundaries he set. He stayed calm, focusing on the rhythm of the hum, breathing steadily. The silver threads spread along the floor, ceiling, and walls. But they no longer reached for the queen. They began to form a loop around him, absorbing the excess energy and stabilizing it. Minutes passed, though it felt longer. The pulse of the core slowed, and the hum became gentle and steady. Ryan felt the energy shift inside him, flowing like a river into controlled channels. He did not fight it. He only guided it with thought and instinct. Finally, the crystal's light softened. The patterns moved more slowly and settled into a calm state. The hum echoed once more, steady and even. Ryan stepped back and exhaled deeply. He felt a faint tingling across his skin, but no pain. The system had accepted the new pattern. It had learned to stabilize without drawing from the queen. He walked back toward the staircase, his steps steady. The glow on his arm faded slightly, but remained as a reminder of the connection. The palace was alive, but it had changed. The network had recognized life, recognized the queen's need for safety, and adapted. When he reached the queen's chamber, the advisors and healers were waiting anxiously. The queen lay peacefully on her bed, her breathing steady. The glow under her skin had disappeared, replaced by a natural warmth. Ryan stepped to her side. She is safe. The system has learned to separate her energy from the network. It will no longer harm her. Varro checked his instruments and nodded. The readings confirm it. The flow is stable. The queen is no longer at risk. The advisors looked at Ryan in astonishment. Soren stepped forward. You risked yourself to save her. You became part of the network. No one else could have done what you did. Ryan bowed his head slightly. I only did what was necessary. The system responds to energy and instinct. Humans are simple, but we can sense patterns others do not. That is why it listened to me. The queen stirred and opened her eyes. She smiled weakly at Ryan. Thank you, she whispered. You saw what no one else could. You protected me when others panicked. Ryan straightened. It was my duty, Your Majesty. I will continue to protect you. The advisors were silent. The room was filled with a quiet reverence. For the first time, they realized that human instinct, simple and direct, could perceive truths even the most advanced minds could not. Soren nodded slowly. From now on, your counsel will be valued as much as your protection. You have proven that insight and courage can change the outcome of any crisis. Ryan felt a faint warmth at his chest. He had done his duty, but he also understood that his connection to the palace was not gone. He could still feel its pulse, quiet now but present. He knew that he would always be aware of its rhythm, ready to act if it ever threatened the queen again. As the morning light filled the chamber, the queen rose slightly in bed. The palace is alive, she said softly. And it listens to you now, Ryan. You have given me more than safety. You have given me hope. Ryan nodded, looking around at the advisors, the healers, and the comm room. The system is learning, so must we. Sometimes life is simple and instinctive, and that is enough to guide even the most complex forces. Varro placed a hand on the console. We will study it further, ensure the network remains stable. But it is clear that humans can perceive patterns even our most advanced technology cannot. The advisors murmured among themselves, respect and humility in their voices. They realized that in a galaxy of strange and powerful beings, human insight and instinct had made the difference between life and death. Ryan returned to his post beside the Queen. The palace hummed softly around them, calm and quiet. He watched the silver threads in the walls, faint but present, knowing that their connection had changed. The network had learned restraint. The Queen's energy was safe. He breathed slowly, letting the calm fill him. He understood that his bond with the palace was not a burden but a tool. A simple human mind could guide even the most intricate of alien systems. That was the power of instinct, observation, and courage. And for now, the palace, the Queen, and the human guard stood together, each stronger for the bond that had been formed. The crisis was over, but the lessons of instinct, patience, and understanding would remain forever. The morning sun rose over Vereen, casting gentle light across the palace towers. The city shimmered as if celebrating the Queen's recovery. The air was calm, and the soft hum of the palace network had slowed to a peaceful rhythm. The crisis had passed, but the memory of what had happened still lingered in the minds of everyone inside the palace. In the Queen's chamber, Ryan stood near the bed, watching over her. She lay resting, her breathing steady and her face calm. The glow that had once pulsed under her skin was gone, replaced by the warm, natural light of life and health. For the first time in days, the Queen slept peacefully. Soren and the other advisors stood in the room, silent. Their expressions were a mix of awe, relief, and humility. They had spent years advising the Queen on politics, strategy, and science. They had faced countless challenges across the galaxy. Yet none of them had seen what Ryan had. Only the human guard had recognized the subtle patterns, the hidden threads of energy, and the danger they carried. Soren finally spoke, his voice low but steady. Ryan, you saved her. You understood something none of us could. You were calm when we panicked. You saw the truth where we could not. Tell me, how did you know what to do? Ryan looked at him quietly. It is not knowledge or training alone. Humans can see patterns that are simple but powerful. Instinct, attention, and observation helped me understand the network. I only followed what I sensed. Varro, the chief engineer, stepped forward. Your instincts are remarkable. Without you, the Queen might not have survived. The Corps accepted your guidance because you connected with it naturally. No machine could have done what you did. The advisors exchanged glances. The weight of their failure and the truth of Ryan's abilities sank in. They had relied on science, protocols, and logic. Yet it was human intuition, quiet observation, and courage that had prevented disaster. The Queen stirred and opened her eyes. She smiled faintly at Ryan. Thank you, she whispered. You saw what others could not. You saved me when all hope seemed lost. Ryan bowed slightly. It was my duty, Your Majesty. I only did what I could to protect you. Soren cleared his throat and looked at the assembled council. From this day forward, the human guard is more than a protector. His insight is a resource we cannot ignore. He will have a voice in matters of the palace when situations demand more than knowledge or power. Instinct has shown its value here. Ryan felt a quiet warmth at his chest. He had not sought recognition, but respect was a natural reward for those who acted in true service. The Queen sat up slowly. The palace network is now stable, she said. Ryan, you have created a bond that ensures my safety, but I want this palace to remain our home, not a danger to any who live here. I will continue to watch over it, Ryan said. The system listens to me, but I am not the master. I will guide it carefully to prevent harm. The palace and the Queen can exist together in balance. Varro nodded. We will also study the network to understand the changes you implemented. With your guidance, we can ensure that the palace remains both safe and functional. Soren looked thoughtful. This is more than just engineering or medicine. This is understanding life and connection. The palace is alive in ways we never imagined, and a human guard has taught us humility. Ryan glanced at the faint silver marks on his arm. They had dimmed but remained as a reminder of his bond with the palace. The network was aware of him now, and he was aware of it. That connection gave him insight and responsibility. He understood that his role was no longer just protection. It was partnership, vigilance, and stewardship. The Queen smiled and reached out a hand. "Rion, come closer. Sit with me." He stepped forward and knelt at her side. She studied him for a moment, her eyes calm and bright. "You risked yourself to save me," she said softly. "Not because of orders or duty, but because you saw the truth and acted. That courage is rare even among humans." Rion shook his head gently. "It was not courage in the way people think. It was awareness. I saw the danger and I acted. Instinct guided me, not heroism." The Queen placed her hand lightly on his. "Whether it was instinct or courage, it saved my life. The palace will remember you, and so will I." Soren cleared his throat again. "We must ensure that this does not happen again. The palace network is advanced, but it must be monitored. We will need Rion's guidance and observation for this." Rion nodded. "I will remain vigilant. The palace will speak and I will listen. If it ever threatens the Queen or anyone else, I will act before harm occurs." Varro added, "We have also learned that technology, no matter how advanced, must be paired with understanding of life. You have shown us that a human mind can guide systems in ways machines cannot." The advisors murmured their agreement. The lesson was clear. Knowledge alone was not enough. Insight, humility, and the ability to observe patterns that were subtle yet essential could prevent disaster. Outside the chamber, the palace hummed softly. The silver threads of energy that had once threatened the Queen now glowed faintly, moving in calm rhythm through the walls. The palace had learned, adapted, and stabilized, but it had also bonded with Rion. He looked around the room. The healers were monitoring the Queen, but they moved with a new respect for him. The advisors were silent, absorbing the significance of what had occurred. Even the Queen seemed more aware of the subtle forces around her. "Rion," the Queen said finally, "I want you to stay close to me, not just as my guard, but as my advisor. Your understanding of the palace and the energy network is invaluable. You are not just a protector. You are a guide." Rion nodded. "I will serve in that capacity, Your Majesty. I will watch, learn, and act, always for your safety." Soren stepped forward. "The Council will also change its perspective. We must value insight from all beings, not only those trained in the arts of diplomacy, science, or politics. Today we have learned a lesson that we will not forget. A single human's instincts saved the Queen when knowledge and power failed." The Queen smiled faintly, her hand still resting on Rion's. "And now we move forward together. The palace is no longer a danger, but it is still alive. We must respect it and its power, but more importantly, we must respect those who perceive what is hidden, even when others cannot see it." Rion stood, feeling the weight of his responsibility, but also the quiet pride of fulfillment. He had acted, guided the network, and ensured the Queen's safety. He had proven that humans, even in a galaxy filled with advanced beings, could make a difference through observation, instinct, and care. As the sun rose higher, its light reflected off the crystal towers of the palace, casting gentle beams into the city below. People in the streets paused for a moment to admire the palace, unaware of the silent battle that had taken place inside. The Queen rose from her bed, fully recovered, and looked out the window. "The palace is alive and it listens now," she said softly. "It has learned to respect life, but we must continue to respect it in return." Rion stood silently beside her. He felt the faint pulse of the network through the palace walls. It was calm, stable, and balanced. The system had learned restraint, and he had learned that humans could guide even the most complex forces. Soren spoke one final time. "Today we have witnessed a truth. Knowledge is vital, but insight, awareness, and courage are equally powerful. Humans are young in the galaxy, but they see in ways we cannot. Let this be remembered in all councils of the Alliance." Rion looked at the Queen. She smiled, confident and calm. The danger had passed. The palace, alive and vast, now existed in harmony with her life and with Rion's guidance. The human guard had proven that even a single being, guided by instinct and courage, could protect a life, shape the fate of a palace, and teach an entire council a lesson in humility. As the day began and the city of Virene awakened beneath the twin suns, Rian returned to his post by the Queen's side. The network pulsed quietly, no longer threatening but aware. And the Queen, the advisors, and the palace itself had all learned something invaluable. That insight, patience, and simple human courage could overcome even the most complex dangers. The palace was calm, the Queen was safe, and a human stood at her side, vigilant and wise. A story of courage, awareness, and the power of humanity had unfolded, and its lessons would echo across the Alliance for generations. The Queen looked at Ryan once more. You saw the truth when others could not. You protected life when others panicked. The galaxy will remember this.